welcome to the next installment of Journey Through John, where we're taking a bite-sized chunk of Scripture, having a brief discussion, then a challenge at the end, hoping that this can be a resource for you to dive into your Word on a more consistent basis. We've been going through John chapter 18 this week, and been talking as Jesus is facing this railroaded trial just to have him killed. That's really what the Jewish leaders are trying to do. And so we've been talking through that. We've also been talking through the denial of Peter and how Peter denied Jesus 3 times. We just finished that up yesterday. The idea is to keep in mind, though, as we're going through this, what Jesus is actually going through, and the persecution and trials that he's facing, the beatings that he's going to be taking, and the crucifixion, all for the hopes of reconciling mankind, and him being, as John the Baptist mentioned earlier in the book, the Lamb of God who's come to take the sins of the world, away the sins of the world. And he's proving, as we go through this chapter, that he once is absolutely that Lamb, the sacrificial Lamb, the innocent one who's shedding his blood to bring that relationship back. Having said that, what we've seen so far is that Jesus has been brought before Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, high priest, and he's been questioned. They really can't pin anything on him, but this trial is going to be railroaded. So today they're actually taking him to the house of Caiaphas, the governor's headquarters, and we pick it up today in verses 28 as we go through 28 to 32. It says, "Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover." They didn't want to go into the house of a Gentile and therefore become unclean. They wanted to be able to have the Passover. And so once again, these guys are trying to take this, I don't know, it seems just very ironic that they're lying and basically causing this person to be murdered, but they don't want to enter into a Gentile's house because then they'd be unclean and couldn't partake of the Passover. It goes on, verse 29. "So Pilate went outside to them and said, 'What accusation do you bring against this man?' And they answered him, 'If this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you.' And Pilate said to them, 'Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law.' The Jews said to him, 'It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death.' This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken, to show by what kind of death he was going to die, meaning the crucifixion." So what the Jewish people are basically doing here, the Jewish leaders, is they can't pin anything on him, and so they're going to take him to the Romans and say he's doing something unlawful. Basically, he's causing a stir, and there's numerous things that can come up here. The fact that he's putting himself above Caesar, if nothing else, would be grounds for there to be punishment. And so they want Jesus dead. They want him out of their hair so they can go about doing the things like they normally do. And as they do this, they take him to Pilate in hopes that the Romans will take care of this. And they kind of want to keep their hands clean. And it's just an interesting thing that, we want things to go the way we want them to go, and we know which way we think they should go, but we don't really want this to come back on us. We want to keep our hands clean in this. In fact, we're not going to enter into your household because we want to have dinner tonight on the Passover, and so we're not even going to go into your house. You need to come out to us, and then we need you to kill this guy for us. It's kind of really a simplistic way to looking at it, but that's the reality. And so Jesus is not only submitting himself to the Jewish leaders, he's also submitting himself to Roman rule. And think about that. Boy, there's a lot to that, and I don't want to get into the political side of things by any means. But Jesus is submitting himself to a pagan government, and he's going to be killed by this pagan government, if you will. They're the ones that will crucify him. The Jewish people wouldn't. These people crucify him, and that would fulfill the prophecy. Once again, God is sovereign and control of this whole thing, and God is using all these people in their free will and guiding them to fulfill his purpose. It's just amazing to see how he unfolds all of this. But we see Jesus submitting himself to this Roman rule, and the fact that this will probably be, it would be inevitably be the end of him. And so that's the challenge for us. And once again, I'm not trying to get political in this, but we as believers need to understand that God controls all governments, including our own. And there are going to be things that we disagree with. There's going to be some of our rights infringed on. But certainly if we have someone to look to, it has to be Jesus if we're a believer. And how many of Jesus' rights were infringed upon in his entire life, but also specifically in this? He laid down everything, every right that he had. If he had a good lawyer, he would have gotten off the hook. If he didn't even have a lawyer, if he had a few people to stand up for him, he would have gotten off the hook. But it wouldn't have fulfilled the purpose of the Father. And so the reality of this is, what do we value more, the purpose of the Father or our rights? That's a sticky one, right? And people, if there's that many people that would watch this, I'm sure that I would get a lot of responses back to this and saying, well, hang on a second. And that's fair. I'm open to that discussion. And if you disagree with me, I'm objective enough to have a conversation. But what I see here is the man, the man, fully God, fully man, Jesus, the person I'm supposed to follow, and he laid down his rights for the purpose of the Father. I hope that's the primary thing for us. What is your purpose, God? And again, that's our challenge. I think it's been recent we've even had this challenge, but I think it's good for us to reiterate and continue to chase this down, because I don't think this is a one and done type of thing, lesson that we learn. What is your purpose, Father, for me? What is your will? And Lord, let me be willing to lay down my rights, the things I feel like I have the right to, in order to follow you. I hope that challenges you. And I'd like to say, I hope it encourages you. I guess maybe not in the sense that we walk away feeling super light about it, but it encourages you to dive deeper into knowing him more. That being said, I do hope it encourages you in that way. And I look forward to seeing you again as we continue this journey through John.